Monsieur Dames. And I'm Mansour Hanif, as mentioned. I work in NEOM. We are a region in Saudi Arabia, and we're building cognitive cities. So can you hear me? Does the sound okay? Okay. So I think we've heard a lot about ethics today, and ethics in AI. But today I want to focus on something that we didn't hear a lot about, which is the supply chain of AI, which is data, basically. So today I'm going to focus on that. But first of all, I'm conscious most people will not know what NEOM is. So first of all, we'll describe what is NEOM, what are cognitive cities that we're building, and then we'll talk about what is the ethical supply chain for data, for AI, which is mostly data. What are the issues involved? What can we do about it? And then I'll talk about a few of the activities we're doing now. As we start the building of these cognitive cities, what are we doing now to actually lay the foundations and create partnerships to address this issue, and why now? So first of all, to simply answer the question of what is NEOM, I think images speak much louder than words, so here's a short video.
Since the beginning, we've changed things. It's in our genes. It's what makes us human. Now we have a chance to change everything. Let's change water so it flows forever, energy so it powers our lives sustainably, and mobility so cities become playgrounds. Let's change the way we feed the world. Designed to live with nature and create factories that make the future better. Let's change learning so it's lifelong. Technology so it predicts our needs. And let's help prevent more illness than we need to cure. Let's change the way we think about money, how we explore the world around us, and how experiences come to life. This is where we can change it all. NEOM, made to change.
So hopefully you get an idea about what NEOM is about. It's all about change, it's all about progress, it's all about accelerating our futures. And that's where I live. I live in NEOM, I've been there for 2 years, and it really does look like that. It's not a made-up image, it's a fantastically beautiful area. But if I was to sum up this really complex, huge project, this huge adventure, the simple phrase, which is our vision, is an accelerator of human progress. In all of its forms, in all of its challenges, in all of its diversities. You've seen some of them in the video, but effectively we've tried to focus on all of humanity's biggest challenges and attract the best minds to NEOM to help us to attempt to solve them. And that includes a lot of the themes you've heard today from Schneider, for example, on renewable energy. You've heard from the travel industry as well. We have a tourism sector, we have an airport sector. So we have about 16 sectors that we've identified as leading the change in the future. And the 3 pillars of that acceleration are also given here. Exceptional livability. I think livability, the human element of what makes our lives livable, is more apparent than ever before, especially after the trauma of COVID. So we're putting that first and foremost. We need to make sure that whatever we do with technology increases our livability as humans. Secondly, thriving businesses. We need to have a strong economic model. Human progress is also based on that, and we believe that livability and protecting the environment now go hand in hand and can effectively produce economic benefits for everybody. So you may have heard of some of the NEOM cities and regions recently. The Line is the most well-known. The Line is our main urban center, and that's the one I'm going to focus on today. You may have heard in October about Oxagon. Oxagon is our manufacturing hub, our clean energy hub, our logistics center and port. And we've also announced last month Trojena. Trojena is our mountain resort, mainly focused on tourism. We've also announced Inoa. Inoa is our renewable energy and water company that was released as a separate holding company just a month ago. And the tech and digital sector has also been spun off. So it's quite a complex project. And there are more regions that are going to be announced this year. There are more companies that are going to be created this year, and we will continue to progress. And the building has begun. The current estimated investment is around $500 billion between now and 2030. The estimated population we're aiming for is around 1 million people or above by 2030, and that will increase after 2030. The first assets will come online in the next couple of years. It's quite a long-term project, but we're building right now. So all of the infrastructure is going in, and we expect the first assets, as in the buildings, the assets, the houses, the hotels, will start coming on air in the next 2 years. The line, which is the main urban center, will have the first modules in 2025. So the line is where we'll base what we're calling our cognitive cities, because the line is actually 170 kilometers long. And so we're going to design these as modular cities along the line. And the line is going to be 100% based on renewable energy. There will be no cars. There will be no streets even, so you can't even have any cars. All of the mobility and the infrastructure will be completely autonomous. So as you can imagine, that is a pretty big AI use case, maybe the biggest in the world. It's not only the biggest construction site in the world, but it's the biggest driver of development in AI and computing that we've ever seen or ever attempted. So the ambition is huge. We know there's a lot of challenges to be faced, but we've started that already, but we know that we can only do this in partnership, and that's why today I'm going to speak about some of the activities we're doing in partnership. So here we just put out our journey that we believe going from smart cities to cognitive cities. I think we all agree today that smart cities aren't really smart enough. I think we've all had our frustrations. Things have improved. There's a lot of automated things we can do now, but we're faced by silos. Data is not shared. There's organizational silos, and we're missing that culture of data and innovation in most cities today. And it's really hard to change those when you're working with a lot of legacy infrastructure and legacy systems. So we don't have that issue. We can effectively go straight to the future because we are green slate. There is no infrastructure. There are no legacy organizations to transform. We can go straight to the future. So the first thing is we estimate that today about 5% of data in cities is actually useful and used. But also we don't actually have visibility of how our data is being used in cities. We leave a trail of data everywhere we go, we know that, but we're not quite sure who's accessing it and what's it doing and what benefit is it giving me, or any of us. So that's the first thing we need to solve is effectively give transparency back to the way data is used, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But it all starts with data, which is the basic supply chain for AI. From data, we get to information, to analysis, to insights, predictions, decisions, and then we get to full autonomy. So that's a whole journey we're going to go through. And we have the, let's say, the ambition, the scale, and the scope in NEOM to accelerate all of that, which is a journey that everybody's on, but perhaps at differing speeds. So very briefly, the foundations of our cognitive cities are going in now. And the last 2 years, I spent a lot of my time, getting ready with the fiber networks, the 5G networks, the subsea networks. We've also done a joint venture with OneWeb for a LEO broadband network. So the connectivity is going in. The data centers are being built. The energy and water infrastructure is going in. So effectively, we are building the foundations now, which is based around fantastic connectivity, fantastic compute capability, and also the ability to put context around all of that data, which is NEOS, our future operating system, and the hyperscale data centers that we're building with that. But it all starts with consent. Now, we're totally conscious that we need to make sure that people are aware of the choices they have, how their data is going to be used, how it's going to impact them and others, and who's got access to it. So everything will be based on a consent platform, which is the first step in our journey towards a data culture and an ethical data culture. So it all comes down, so coming back to the supply chain, the data. This is a phrase from our CEO, Nadmi El-Nasser. And he's emphasizing here that we are encouraging people to cooperate and partner with us to treat NEOM as a living lab for the future. And there's a big focus on collaboration here. we totally realize the scale and scope of what we have. It's, if we were to take actually all of the companies in the world and all of the AI talent in the world, we probably wouldn't have enough to fit all of our needs. So we need to grow talent, we need to train talent, and we need to attract the best partners. But collaboration is key. But let's talk about data, which is a big problem for us, I think, because we are a clean slate, and nobody's ever tried to build cognitive cities before, so we don't actually have a lot of analogs in the real world today that we can take data from. But first of all, just focusing on the supply chain of data, today it's a very opaque supply chain, and it's quite dominated by the big players. And I'm not saying that they're doing anything necessarily wrong, but there's not a lot of visibility about the real lives that are actually involved in creating that data. And you hear a lot of stories about people having, crowdsourced teams of millions of people around the world who at any moment can go out to the street and take a picture of a lamppost. It's fantastic, a little bit scary as well, but you wonder, what equity or what access do all of these people get? What training do they get? Are they actually becoming part of the future industry, or are they simply providing a basic service and getting no access to the benefits of what they're doing? So that's our primary concern with the ethical supply chain. Estimates of how many people are actually involved in data production vary hugely, but it's estimated to be in the tens of millions at the very least. But there's a big concern that as the need for data increases, the requirements are being outsourced more and more to various levels of outsourcing, and effectively the visibility of the lives around the people who are producing that data is getting more and more obscured. However, there are some great examples, and I don't know if you saw the panel today of Women in AI, and the CEO of Sama, Wendy Gonzalez, was present. And I just wanted to highlight Sama as a fantastic example of a company that right now is already working to produce a more ethical AI supply chain. And you can see here that they've got a philosophy that effectively gives equity of access to the people who are working on the data and ensures that people are, wherever they are in the world, they are being employed with a consistent and coherent work package that effectively gives them an opportunity to go up the ladder and get the training they need and to be part of the digital economy that they're helping to build. So this is a fantastic example, and we hope to continue discussing with Sama and partner with them. But effectively, Sama is an example, but we need many more examples, and we need to scale this up to make sure that this becomes, as we go into the future, that this becomes a standard practice. And we have some ideas about how to do that, and I'd like to raise why it's important and why is it the right time to do that now? What's happening now that's changing everything? So let's talk a little bit about what we plan to do in NEOM. And I've highlighted here, if we go back to our original vision, which was an accelerator of human progress, then I think what we'd really like is an AI supply chain which accelerates human progress for everybody in that supply chain, everybody who's part of it. That's our ultimate goal when it comes to data and the supply chain itself. So it's very consistent with our overall vision. On the right here, I've just put 3 areas I'm going to talk about today, which is to explain what are we doing now in partnership to create that future AI ethical supply chain. And the first one is all about culture, and you can see here our mission for data is to embed this ethical data, ethical AI and ethical data-driven culture right across everything in NEOM. And it's a high ambition, but it's doable because we are building from scratch. We're still a small company. We're about 1,500 people right now, and we will grow to to eventually hundreds of thousands of people working on our extended workforce. But if we start now and embed it right now, and we make sure we nurture it, then it can grow and be embedded right across the organization. So first of all, it's a thing about embedding that culture across our processes, across our mindset, across our platforms, across our data strategy, and across our tools. Secondly, we want to sponsor pilots that experiment with a new way of spreading that AI supply chain to more and more people. and I'll talk about that in a minute. It's an experimental pilot that we'll be kicking off towards the end of this year. And thirdly, you know, the cognitive cities that we want to create don't exist today. So that's the excitement of being in NEOM. We're creating completely new visions of how people will live, which are human-centric. So we are setting up a research institute, the Applied Research Institute of Cognitive Cities, and that's where we're going to experiment and actually create the AI supply chain of the future, because some people have mentioned Web3 and Metaverse and NFTs today, but that immersive world is going to completely sweep away the whole way we do things in terms of data. It's a whole new approach to creating data, which will very soon, in the next 5-6 years, become real-time and dynamic and totally different to anything that we have today. So first of all, just looking at the values we're putting in. So the first point, as I mentioned, what are we trying to embed in our mindsets? And you can see here that we have the opportunity to do this because of the unprecedented scale and scope of our greenfield opportunity. So we can leverage what we're building to actually build partnerships that can actually change the supply chain significantly, because we have such a big need. The first thing is inclusive and equitable access. So we mentioned that before. So we'd like to build on what companies like Sama have done to embed into our systems, into the data sheets that come with our data, a tracing mode for us to understand how the data has been produced, and has it been produced in a way that will benefit the people who, or give at least equitable access and fair access to the people who've actually produced that data. So apart from that, we mentioned consent already, and making sure that data is exchanged ethically, legally, and with full consent is also a key part of what we do. Just change the microphone here. This one's working. Is it okay if I switch mic? Can you switch this one? Nope. Yep. Yes. 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 Here we go. Sorry about that. Just getting a bit closer to the screen here. So effectively, data involves the creations, transmission, storage, and processing. That's a chain. That's another dark patch in the supply chain of AI, because there's not enough visibility about the carbon footprint of the data we produce. And that's something we'd like to shine a light on. We will have 100% renewable energy powering all our systems eventually, but it's going to take us a few years to build that. But in the meantime, we can actually use these new technologies such as blockchain and other tracing methods to effectively trace the full footprint of the data that we're using. And that will be analyzed in our sourcing methods to make sure that that we are also taking that into account in the way we source and use data in NEOM. So I won't go through all of these today, but you can see that, you know, trust is another key area. I'll just mention it briefly here that synthetic data is becoming more and more real. Synthetic media is becoming more and more real. And we need to also understand how do we address the way those synthetic products are being made and make sure that they're done ethically as well. And this is just a schematic which shows a little bit about our architecture for data that we're building. It's a data platform, as you can see, which will deal with real-world data and synthetic data. And we are building into the platform already elements which will monitor and evaluate the quality of the data, also in terms of the ethical production of that data, as well as other factors. Moving on to the other activity which I mentioned, here is here's a description of the pilot we're doing in partnership with several partners. They're named here. So the first one is OneWeb. We have a joint venture with OneWeb that's providing LEO connectivity across the whole world. Their network will be live by the end of this year. It's starting in certain areas before that. So the full global coverage will be by the beginning of next year. And we have partnered with them across the Middle East and Africa. And that connectivity is different to today's satellite connectivity because it's LEO connectivity, so the latency is much lower, and it's got a much better quality and much more closer to fiber. So what that allows us to do is to take the SAMA type model that is focused on certain areas and certain offices and spread that model around geographically, especially to those areas which are underserved and to refugee communities in particular, which are very underserved. And the first pilot we'd like to do is we're working with NAML, the organization mentioned here, that is led by Louise, that you can contact here. And they are focusing on providing equitable access to refugee communities that today are pretty much locked out. So what's happening today, why is it important today, is number one, because the divide has increased. The divide between people who got access to technology and those who don't is increasing. And that's despite, you know, gradually mobile coverage increasing across the whole world. The divide is increasing because the quality, the capacity, the opportunities, the access in developed countries is increasing even faster than the coverage is spreading into remote areas. So we need to act now. The good news is these technology advancements, such as LEO broadband connectivity and the digital transformation that is, you know, driving AI across all industries, is actually creating much more opportunity for us to spread the opportunity to where the talent is, because in all of these underserved communities there are many millions of talented people that we can't reach. So the opportunity is there from the talent perspective, but the and effectively the work that needs to be done is more remote and can be offered to people who are in remote areas once the infrastructure is there. But also there's a huge opportunity that's opening up. The metaverse is becoming real. It's not just Meta who are driving that, but every major company. In NEOM we have our own large project which is called Xverse. And so we are going to need, you know, millions of new talented people to create the content to populate those metaverses. And when they do that, they will also be given opportunities to create art, to create value, to use their human creativity. So this is a huge opportunity, and that's why it's the right time now to try and spread the opportunity to around the world, because there's a need, there's an issue, there's a need that we need to fulfill from the industry, and there's a huge opportunity for everybody. So we're not going to be taking away from anybody to give to anybody else. The whole thing is growing. So what we plan to do is to effectively offer connectivity through our partner OneWeb to refugee centers. We'll start with refugee centers, but we won't be just limited to that. We'll be expanding it to other areas that are underserved, and allow people to get access to digital connectivity, to get access to a training platform that will be provided by NAML, and effectively to be trained up not only in the technologies that they are using to connect, such as the LEO broadband, but also the future areas of data curation, but also data curation for the metaverse. And so effectively, that's something we're going to try it out at the end of the year. We are looking for more partners to join us. We are very open to anybody else to join us and to participate. And we're going to measure the results to make sure that what we're doing is effectively achieving the benefits every 6 months. But we're very hopeful that this can actually make a difference. Finally, I'd like to talk about research and the Applied Research Institute for Cognitive Cities we're setting up now. This will be up and running by the second half of this year. And this, at the moment, we're writing the detailed research plan. This is also an open partnership. And our mission is really to create a new holistic approach to designing cognitive cities of the future, which will be based on mixed reality and AI in the application to urban development, especially ethical AI. But we're also integrating robotics and metaverse technologies directly. So we're planning the cities, you know, in the metaverse first before they become physically real, which is our conundrum and our issue. So you're very welcome to join us if you feel you can contribute to this. We are collecting partnerships now, and we'll be finalizing in the next 2 months. And what we hope to create is what many people call the infosphere, and this is also coined by Professor Floridi, who is a philosopher of digital ethics. And it's really where our digital and physical selves merge. We think that we can actually represent this in kind of data halos that can be made visible in the city based on your choices and your consent. So it's possible that we could build the ethical supply chain into those halos and make the supply chain visible to others if you consent for that to be done. So transparency and visibility of the data becomes real in these mixed reality cities. But effectively, there's a lot of work to be done there. So we are using this research center to explore the ethical policy and regulatory issues of the future, and to understand what rules need to be made for such cities as we develop. And we'll use the Xverse as a research tool. That's where we will effectively be putting our buildings before they are built, and we'll be allowing people to access as avatars, and effectively sharing that space with robots and the autonomous vehicles that we'll be allowing into the real world later. They'll all be trained in the metaverse. And I've spoken about this many times, that the metaverse is the training ground for robotics. The metaverse is the training ground for autonomous systems. The current data supply chain, I don't know what's going to happen to in the future if it doesn't go into the metaverse. But effectively, that's where autonomous systems and AI systems will live and breathe and grow and nurture and become real. For NEOM, it's particularly acute because, as I pointed out, there is, our architecture is so different to anything in the world. There is no physical equivalent. So we can't go out to tell people to go out and take pictures or take content. There's nothing there. But we still need to be autonomous right from day one. So effectively, the metaverse is the only way we can be ready on day one, because we need to populate that metaverse with our autonomous vehicles, with our 100,000 robots, and train them in the metaverse for our future world, because there is no physical equivalent. So in that sense, we are seeing the emergence of the future AI supply chain. In NEOM, we're driving it because we have to, because there is no other choice. But for all other partners, it's a way of getting a taste of what will eventually happen over the next 10, 20, 30 years everywhere. We're going to be driving it first in NEOM, so it's a good way to dip into the future of the ethical supply chain. And this is just an example of what it will look like. And as you can see on the text here, we are making sure that humanity is embedded into everything we do, and we make sure that we embed our ethical principles and our livability principles into all of the digital and physical infrastructure. And with that, I think I've got about 2 minutes left if there's any questions.
I think we have a question. I don't know where the roving mics are.
First of all, thank you very much. This was fascinating. I'm curious, though, a bit about how exactly the consent layer works at the beginning. Because sometimes in data, we find that consent is a bit of a double-edged sword. You want people to be in charge of their data, but what if they all decide you can't use it, and then you have no data?
No, of course, absolutely, and it hasn't been handled well up until now. And effectively, it's all about choice. So the user will always have choice. And we have effectively a platform, a product that we've announced a few months ago called MELD, which is our consent platform. And effectively, that's how we plan to make the data choices easier for people, more understandable for people, and with transparency. So people should be able to understand what they get or they don't get if they consent to the platform. But if they effectively don't consent, then their data can't be used.
Give a round of applause to Mansour Hanif.